The debate's on. Do I have to watch it? Hillary, just shut up. This is a non-issue, unless you'd heard it into one. Nobody thinks Hillary is an honest, credible candidate. Her numbers are not going to move by attacking her character. It's like accusing a lion of being a carnivore. You might not like carnivores, but you understand a lion is for what it is. Or maybe to use a more apt metaphor, it's like accusing a lion of having spots. You shouldn't, accusing a leopard of having spots. Lions don't have spots. Maybe if you took a hybrid between a lion and a leopard, it might have spots. But lions don't have spots. Or at least we don't think they have spots. Have you ever seen a shaved lion? How do you know that a lion doesn't have spots? But the leopard is the one with the spots. And if you can accuse a leopard of having spots, but you wouldn't expect the leopard to change its spots. Nor would you think particularly bad of the leopard for having spots. It's a leopard. Leopards have spots. You can imagine the leopard looking back at you and saying, what am I going to do? I'm a leopard. But the more she talks, the more she opens herself up to things that might convince people not to vote for her. Like that she's stuck in the fucking Cold War. She can't talk her way out of this. She doesn't need to. This being the WikiLeaks things. She should look the camera in the eye and state that politics is messy. That's a pragmatic, realistic position. Again, everybody knows she's dishonest. Everybody knows he's dishonest too. So, if you don't want to vote for somebody that's dishonest, there's no answer on the other side. I've been over this a bunch of times. It's she got the best candidate she could possibly get. Because everything you could possibly hit her on, he's worse. Except foreign policy. But Americans don't vote on foreign policy. So everybody knows she supports the TPP. She tells us she's not. We all know that she does. But he's going to support the TPP too. He tells us he doesn't, but he will. Everybody knows she supports Keystone. He doesn't even pretend he doesn't support Keystone. These really aren't issues. There's a link to a Swans video here. But I believe it's David Hicks. Is it David Hicks? Is that the right first name? Let me verify that. I'm getting a brain freeze on that one. Yeah. No. Okay. Just a second here. I don't think it's David Hicks. David Hicks is a terrorist from Australia. You look a terrorist? You're too white to be a terrorist. This is a Hicks that was... It's Bill Hicks, okay. That's right. Both Tool and Swans have used Bill Hicks material. And I do believe that that's who that is in the song. Dead guy now. For quite a while, actually, huh? Let me fix that a bit. Yeah. Dead a long time. I guess I got a little bit of mental... my subconscious is at work or something. So something plays David Hicks in my mind. I can't even recall a story. Somebody says, I see that David Hicks is a terrorist from Australia. I couldn't tell you more than that about David Hicks. And yet, it's David Hicks that jumps over into my mind and not the correct Bill Hicks. It's just a song that reminded me of this scenario. Prisoner in the Skull. It's the prisoner in the skull. But how we're all fucked up. She's more fucked up than him. And some time went by, and I decided that I couldn't watch it. And I didn't watch it. I turned it off. I did not watch the debate. She's a warmonger and he's a retard. I watched something like 25 minutes of it. Tuned in late, turned it off early. It was revolting to me. So file me under disgusted. And don't expect me to analyze it further. And I'm going to hold to that. I'm not going to analyze this debate. They're both horrible. What would I do in Syria? I would immediately halt all support to the rebels, who are in no way moderate, as they could not survive without it. I would then negotiate with the Russians to stop the bombing and provide a tactical assistance to the Syrian police in rounding up any remaining moderate terrorists. And we wouldn't go through this Assad doesn't have legitimacy thing. It's not up to us to decide if Assad has legitimacy. It's up to the people of Syria to decide if Assad has legitimacy, and the people of Syria have been very clear that Assad has legitimacy. Not according to me, that's according to the Syrian people. And it's the Syrian people that get to make that choice. So let's stop funding the terrorists in Syria and let the cops there deal with it. This is not a solution that I like. It's the only solution that exists. Okay? Anything else is decades of war. You want to fight this war for the next 20 years? Because that's what's going to happen. They will never defeat the Russians. I mean, the other option is, do you want to start a war with Russia? You want a hot war with the Russians? This is a stupid position. The Americans, and by extension NATO, us, we need to acknowledge that we're in a stupid position, retreat, and go do something more productive. I'm sorry to be flippant, but it's the truth of it, okay? I would continue to fund NGOs to seek a peaceful transfer of power in Syria, which probably wouldn't be so hard if we took away their fucking guns. I don't think that Assad is particularly well loved in the region. But if the choice is between Assad, which is a secular, social democratic state, and it is. Hey, you want to know something, guys? Syria has a universal health care system. And you think they're the third world? They don't have a lot of freedom of expression, but it's not such a terrible place to live, unless you get off on criticizing the government. It's a secular society with a lot of social rights. I can think of a lot of worse places to live, including the United States. So when the Syrian people pick that over a bunch of fucking terrorists that are operating with jihadis and want to enforce religious laws on them, I'm not going to support the fucking jihadis that want to push down religious laws. I'm going to support the modern secular social state. I'm trying to avoid the word democracy because it's... Well, I mean, do you think you live in a democracy? But nonetheless. If you take away the guns from these assholes, of course they're not going to support them. How do you prevent a movement? It's the same thing in the United States, right? How do you prevent protesters from getting anywhere in the United States? Is you accuse them of violence. We all know this. Ask a free trade protester. And then the media run stories about how the protesters are violent. And then they say, well, it was the cops. And it probably was. But why was it the cops? because they want to tar the protesters. They want to say they're violent. Because we know that as soon as the protesters are thought of as violent, the majority will not support them. And it's the same fucking thing there. If you want to have a revolution in Syria, the first thing you should do is you should stop funding the people with the guns. And you should start funding the people with the flowers. I'm not really big into policing. And if I thought that this uprising, which is in fact a foreign-backed group of militants, if I thought there was any good potential in it, then I would not be proposing this course of action. But I realize that these are a bunch of no-goodniks. And the best thing to do with them is to take them out. It would help the Syrian police take them out. And then I would work with the Russians to take out ISIS. I would not talk about setting up a no-fly zone. That would be perpetuating a proxy war in a geopolitical struggle with the Russians that I demand immediately stops. I would also spend trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars to transfer off of carbon, which will end our alliance with the fucking Saudis, which is what is driving this mess. Fuck the Saudis. No more selling things to the Saudis. No more cooperating with the Saudis. Absolute, total, permanent boycott on the Saudis. And lastly, I would construct an international coalition to institute regime change in Saudi Arabia and end this fucking catastrophe once and for all. I would stop bombing Syria and start bombing the Saudis. Because that's where the problem is. Are you still confused as to why I don't want to vote for her? Even though I insist that you must. And I know that you're going to look at it and you're going to say, geez, isn't that what Trump says? Well, maybe. It doesn't really matter. Because it doesn't mean anything. He'll wake up tomorrow until he changes his mind. Right? And even so, he's not the guy I want in charge of this, okay? This is a difficult thing to do. Okay? You have to completely switch alliances. You've got to make sure that when you're aligning with the Russians, you don't let them take advantage of you. He's too incompetent to follow through with it. You don't want him doing it. But I have been clear from the start that if Trump does have an upside, it is with his foreign policy. Everything else he says is stupid. Okay? His economic policies are ridiculous. His fiscal policies are absurd. His social policies are frightening. But his foreign policy is actually, I think, a little bit better. Like I have not been shy about that. If the election was solely about foreign policy and nothing else, I would endorse Trump. But it's not. And he's an idiot. Yes, I understand that the actual policy in the region is divide and conquer. Set the barbarians against each other and steal their shit. The old Roman tactic, I've been over this repeatedly. Watch my vids. It's all over them. It doesn't mean I have to support it. She just pissed me right off. I'm watching the debate and she goes off on her Syrian plan and I just snapped. I turned it off, never turned it back on, haven't watched it yet, not going to watch it. But you do still have to vote for her.